Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hidden Realms YouTube channel. I am your resident GM, Joshua MacGregor, and I am here once again on this show called Roll Insight, the show where we talk about all of the videos and the behind-the-scenes stuff that go on in the videos throughout the week, and all the behind-the-scenes stuff that goes on for me and for the team, what's going on week to week, and kind of relay back to you some information which you may or may not find insightful into DMing, into the player process, into how we make these shows, and just general stuff that's going on. So, without further ado, let us do our gimmick where we roll an insight check on this D20, and it's a 7, which is much better than we usually do. It's almost always bad, the inside rolls. I have no idea why. In any case, we are here to talk about the Mockeries and the Reserve List, episodes 6 of each, which bring their respective second mysteries, their time in the second towns that they visit, to a close, which ultimately brings us about 20% of the way through these campaigns. So that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about is sort of the trajectory that these stories are on, why we're doing shorter campaigns, and et cetera, why these choices are being made, as well as why the episodes are being released in the way that they are being released. So let's start with episode 6 of the Mockeries. Episode 6 of the Mockeries, was super intense. When we left off last week, we left Thesia had been downed by an attack from Olus, who's this rival UNT character, and Cloud had been speared to a cliff wall and was hanging lifeless, or unconscious rather, because of an attack from the werewolf Orlando Coin. When we come back to this episode, however, things turn around pretty drastically. Olus, I think actually we need to talk about the turning point of the fight, which is there was a moment where I made a roll. I didn't realize until I had edited afterwards how big of a thing this was. But I made a roll to determine whether Olus would be smart enough to go after Theremin up on the cliff, or whether he would go for the prize, which is a wounded Orlando Coin in front of him. And he rolled poorly, which meant that he went after Olus. And I think that if he had gone after Theremin, things would be very different to the way they ended up. But in any case, after a couple of incredible natural 20s from both the players who were down, they managed to get back up. They managed to get Theremin, put himself on the line, did a good medicine check, and got Cloud up from the cliff face. Thesia got herself up and did the weird UNT thing where she can get half of her health back by eating her own skin. And they turned the fight around. Olus was transforming into a werewolf and dead, but Orlando Coin escaped with his life. Truly, the number of natural 20s over the course of the session that we recorded, which we split into episodes 5 and 6, was staggering. I think it was like 7 natural 20s. And of course, they come back and they create this alliance between the Goliaths and the townsfolk of Merleystone. And they get Ash the horse and all of these wonderful things, and they play such a fantastic gig. And I gave them quite a hefty bonus to this gig because of, interestingly, how significant this alliance with the Goliaths was. And we'll see that there may be different bonuses and or penalties to future performance checks going forward into future towns. So they managed to do combat, and it was really gratifying to me because often with warlocks, so I'm thinking of Callum's character Theremin right now. With warlocks, the correct thing, number crunching wise, to do is often just to shoot an Eldritch Blast and pass turn. Theremin did that, right? He did enough of that, but he also managed to, go down this rope and get Cloud and sort of save Cloud. And so there was enough variety for him as a new player, I felt, to not have him be totally bored with his Eldritch Blast, which was really important to me. And the other two, who know the game very well but haven't necessarily gotten as much experience, also did incredibly well in this fight. So it's worth congratulating everybody on the stakes of this fight got very high very quickly, and I've talked sort of to them about the fact that I didn't want to kill them in this fight, and I don't want to kill them, period, in this story until we reach sort of nearer to the end of the story is when we can sort of start to deal with stuff like that about really players dying. But these are the characters that we're following, and I wanted that to be very clear. However, the dice did funny things, and some of the monster choices that I made were scary. So I had all these things going through my head as a DM, and I'm like, oh my goodness, how do I save this? How do I save these downed characters? And they ended up saving themselves. And so that was very gratifying to me. And here's a little behind the scenes thing. Olus had more hit points than Orlando Coin. And in my head, Orlando Coin was the villain of the week, right? And Olus was a potential rival that could go forward, Sasuke to Naruto, et cetera, going forward. But what happened was that Olus died and Orlando Coin was the one who got away. And the fact that they had more history with him that made the response to that so much better than the thing I had in my head. And that just goes to show this yet another example of character choice and the randomness of the dice giving you a better story than you could ever have cooked in your brain. So don't be afraid, DMs, of letting those things happen, letting those story things get out of your hands for a bit. And it was entirely possible that both of them would have died and they would have been completely successful and had no things going forward, but I like the way it worked out. The Reserve List episode 6 also showed combat. This is a continuation of the first combat for the Reserve List. Now, the Reserve List has more new, brand new players. Callum was brand new in the Mockeries, but we had a little bit more prep time before we started playing, so I got to explain more of the rules. And Callum has taken to the game like a fish in water. So that's... we've talked about it before. I'll mention it again, I'm sure. With the Mockeries group, the new players are both incredible improvisers and writers, actors and storytellers. It's just the mechanics of the game which have been a little bit slower to implement. And to get used to, which is completely fine. Not every part of the game is going to appeal to every person, and that is totally cool. If you enjoy the crunch, go and play a game where people are like, I fucking love the crunch. If you love storytelling and role-playing more than the crunch, this is me, then go and find people who will play those games with you as well. I do actually quite like the crunch as well, but story is quite a focus for me. So we were in first combat, and so there was a lot of explaining the rules and starting to get people familiarized with the difference between rolling attacks and rolling damage, and stuff like that, which, people are like, wow, you're so patient, to those more experienced players and to the DM whenever you're teaching new people. But the thing is, we all remember what it's like to be learning the game and not know the difference between a D20 and a D8 right off the bat. Like, how to roll ability checks, how to roll damage, how to attack with different weapons, especially if you're starting to use class abilities like hiding and dashing around. And so these are things that we will definitely continue to develop people's level of comfort with going forward. But they were in this fight. This fight was, I mean, if the bad guys had hit more than they did, I think I think they hit like 1 out of every 10 times the sort of the hench people. But yeah. They were in this situation. They wildly outnumbered their opponents. It was quite an easy first combat. But if you remember, the first combat for the Mockeries was also quite easy as well. And so they managed to defeat their enemies, 1 casualty, 2 prisoners, and bring a close to this Rithertell arc by saving the Blink Dog puppies and returning them to their parents, and stopping these smugglers from Aruhan. Now, this has been splitting up reserve list episodes into 2 is tricky in my mind. I'm used to D&D episodes being 2 hours to 4 hours long. But what we're doing here is we want it to be week to week. We want people to be able to reliably come back to this story regularly, as opposed to fortnightly, which is how often we play, but is quite a bit of time to expect an audience to keep up with the story and keep up with the characters. So all this to say is there's a reason that we split the episodes up the way that we do. I will be looking into going forward time budgeting and actually doing like an episode cap in the middle and then starting a new episode in the middle of a session. I will look at that, and maybe set timers and things. I have been very lackadaisical in doing that, just because we're very social and not everybody is as committed to these episodes being episodes on YouTube as I am. A lot of people just want to play the game and, as one would a home game, and that is completely cool. Not that anybody has said we don't want to be on YouTube, because then, of course, we would not be showing those episodes on YouTube. Check out the Lost episode, which is one of these roll insights, a couple of roll insights ago, for our policy on that, which is if you're not comfortable, then we don't do it. But yeah, everybody's cool with it being put on YouTube, but not as many people are as committed to that thing necessarily as others, which is fine. So yes, I will be implementing something like that soon. And then each episode will feel a little bit more like episodes. And that will be something that I definitely do going forward into future projects, which could be very cool. So we've talked about new players and sort of introducing combat. We've talked about how we split up the episodes. Let's talk a little bit about the structure of the series as a whole going forward. So we're 20% of the way through. Generally, the number of sessions that we spend in a town has been 2. This has varied a little bit from group to group, and when necessary, will continue to be varied. Although I'm fairly certain that I will be able to keep them on relatively the same track in terms of seeing that they're done their like third towns at the similar time, seeing that they are done, their fourth towns at a similar time, etc. Although I mean gigs rather than towns, because these things are going to start to change as we get to bigger cities and do other little bits to do with overarching story. So let's talk a little bit about let's continue to talk about structure, a little bit about these overarching stories. Being 1/5 of the way through is kind of scary in a way, but if you think about it, we have been doing a lot of setup, right? We have been setting up the protagonists, so you kind of like know what their deals are, who they are. They are starting to get a handle on their abilities. They're starting to uncover mysteries and things like this, right? I wouldn't say that the beginning has yet ended, because there's stuff to do with the third towns, which is the game that we are playing through now, which are still introducing certain elements which are going to carry forward into the end game of these two campaigns. And that's true both of the Mockeries and of the reserve list. I can announce in this Roll Insight that in the episodes, in episode 7 of the reserve list, we have a very exciting announcement. My dear friend Hugo is going to be joining the game as a player character. And this is not a temporary thing. It's not a guest appearance. He's joining the campaign. His character is amazing. He doesn't have his camera on. He's just doing audio, but he's a wonderful role player, a very, very generous role player. And he brings an enormous amount to the team. I'm so excited for you to be introduced to. I misspoke just now. No, I didn't. Ha ha ha. It is tomorrow. Tomorrow's the Mockeries, then the reserve list on Thursday. Reserve list episode 7 is when you will be introduced to his player character, and the week after, you get to see even more of that character doing their bits. Huzzah! It's such an exciting thing. And the Mockeries, of course, are getting into some fun stuff as well. Pardon me. The reason the campaigns are sort of structured the way they are, I expect that after every gig, so after they've solved every sort of arc of the story, they will level up. So they will reach level 4 in time for the 4th town, if that makes sense. They're level 3 now, going after finishing up in Morley-Stone and in Rithertell. They reach level 3 to go to the next part of the story. That makes sense. So people will be level 9 probably going into the finales of these two shows, which is pretty cool. It means getting to a level of play which is quite complicated, where people are very powerful, right? And can be dealing with fairly excessive threats. And then ending the campaign with them going to level 10. Now, this does not mean that the end of these two campaigns are the ends of the stories of these characters, or that they will not return again. What it means is that we have an end point that feels very definite, and it means that I can shoot for story arcs that will have noticeable conclusions at that point. And then this will be sort of the first half of the stories with these characters. And the reason that we're doing it like this, another reason is not that that was a reason. A reason that we are doing it like this is that we are playing these games bi-weekly. So we are playing the reserve list every other week, and the Mockeries is a little bit more of a toss-up. But generally speaking, like every once in a while we can play every week, but generally speaking, we play once every 2 weeks. And what that means is the level of familiarity you have with the concepts, the ideas, with your own characters, is longer in the real world. You have spent a longer amount of time with your characters than the in-game recordings would suggest. And that's useful because it means that we're very comfortable with you become very comfortable with these characters and these ideas. And forgive me, it means that every 4 episodes that you see, every 2 sessions for us, is takes a month to do. And saying that we do a town every 2 sessions or so means that it's about a month per town. So it's about 2 months, 2.5 months that we've been playing these games already, and we are 1/5 of the way through. So 1 month times 5 is there are another no, sorry, times 10 means this campaign, these 2 campaigns will likely last about 10 to 12 months. These will likely be a year in the completing, and that's a big deal. I don't know how things are going to go. I don't know how the pandemic is going to change our playtime. I hope it doesn't. I don't know if certain people will have more time or less time, or what have you going, but a year with these characters is a big amount of time. So that's what we're looking at. And it means that we can take time for the beginnings. It means the developments are going to be spectacular, and you have a lot left to look forward to. I can tell you from where I sit that there is a lot that is coming that is going to be freaking awesome. And again, I want to reiterate that the Mockeries and the Reserve List are very different shows. They are doing very different things. The Mockeries are going to be dealing with a lot more cosmic things, because religion is a factor in in 2 of those PCs, because one of the characters is technically an alien on Cygalia. We're going to be dealing with these big things, whereas Reserve List, we can keep the stakes very high, but the scale is a little bit lower. And that, I think, is the key, is that the stakes, no matter which show we're doing, are always going to be very high, but the scale is different, and the focus of the Reserve List is much more on this group of people who are part of a band and are sort of like dealing with these bits of intrigue, discovering that they are, family, and what their family is doing, and all this jazz. The Mockeries are going through similar things in terms of like bonding with one another and playing these gigs. But in the meantime, there are these grand forces at work. There are priests of Malar hunting lycanthropes. Theramin's father, Balzabul, is one of the most impressive of the archdevils of hell, and is starting to ask his son for favors. And the stuff with Cloud is crazy. And the next couple episodes of the Mockeries get a bit crazy, dealing with this kind of stuff. Guys, that's what I've got in me for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you have it in you and you like this content, if you felt it was insightful, give us a like, subscribe to the channel for the main D&D series because so good. And we are delighted to share them with you. And stay safe during these times. And last thing before I go, thank you so much, America, for voting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. You deserve this win. I know that there's a lot left to do. Does not solve an incredible number of the problems that are going on. It does not solve COVID. It does not solve the systemic things that put Trump in power, but it is a win and hugely relieving. Only for all, but for the rest of the world. And if you are American and you're watching this and you did not vote for Biden, I know that losing the election has got to hurt right now. I know that's got to hurt. And all I can say is that there is a man in power who is going to represent you, and that is good. Take care, everybody, and we will talk again very soon. Bye-bye.